before we get started, let's just do quick introductions. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and your experiences as, in the recruiting area, specificity, all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, before I get into that, I just got to say two things. I'm thankful I'm not naked up here and that y'all showed up. I mean, giving someone your time is so incredibly valuable and appreciated. So thank you for showing up and wanting to hear more about this topic. So I'm Stephanie Holman, technical recruiter with MetroStar. They're right here in the front row. Thanks for coming out and supporting me. I primarily recruit for defense and national security. I think I have some of the toughest, hard to fill requisitions because they're senior roles. They're at the TS/SCI with CI Poly level. I also support a government customer that I can't name that has additional background check requirements, which gets really interesting really fast. So that's me in a nutshell.
I am Kim Murphy, so I am one of our senior recruiters for BlueHalo. I also am our military and veteran liaison, so I do a lot of work with our Skill Bridge program, our spouses reach out, anything military and veteran focused, that kind of falls under me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you again, as Stephanie said, thank you everybody for investing some time into this discussion. We'll just jump right into the topic of branding. So give us a little bit of an input, your personal look into what is employer branding, why is it crucial in today's competitive job market? And we'll start with you, Stephanie.
Yeah, so I mean, branding is all around us. We are constantly sold, right? There's some of you in the audience right now, you are wearing brands, you are drinking Pepsi, it's all around us, right? But we're very selective with where we give our attention to and the products that we buy, right? Branding to me, and this is nothing new to y'all, is company values, work environment, employer value proposition, reputation, trust, career growth. The list can go on. What I'm more interested in talking about is the why. Why is branding so important? Because attention is the #1 asset, right? You are fighting for someone's time, for them to stop and say, you know what? I want to talk to them. I want to talk to MetroStar. I want to talk to BlueHalo. And another piece of why that's so critical is because cleared individuals, especially that they have the experience, the skill set, the TS/SCI with CI Poly, they have options, many, many options, right? So, Kim, turn.
Yeah, so following along with that, it's your first impression, right? When you see the Pepsi logo, when you see the apple from Apple, you have certain emotional responses. And in this community where you have maybe a split second to get somebody to either buy into what you're saying, to make a decision, to have positive or negative thoughts about what you're saying, your company, the values you have, what you stand for, it's critically important to be focused on it and attentive to what that means, not only for you as a person, selling essentially that company, but for your candidates to also, as they interact.
So it's a great explanation of employer branding, but what does recruiter branding mean to you? And how does it differ from the broader concept of employer branding?
So I'm not gonna lie about this one. This is where I feel like it's exciting because your recruiter branding is you. Like, who are you? What do you do? Who do you talk to? What do you like to talk about? Do you want to talk more about current news events and tech stacks? Do you want to do a live stream? Does that make you want to poke your eye out? Like, what is it that makes you excited that's going to come through to the people that you're talking to? The employer brand, at least for some of us, in bigger organizations, we don't have a lot of control over that. There's a Marcom team, there's somebody that's dedicated to making sure that that message gets put out in a very specific way. But your recruiter brand is you. And there's really no way that, within reason, that somebody could say, hey, this isn't right, you're not doing this the way that we want you to, because it is you. It's a reflection of you. It's how you build trust with candidates. It's how you choose to view yourself, the things that you find important, the things that you share with candidates. And it's the fun part, I think, of being a recruiter, is being able to adapt that maybe to whatever skill set you're looking for, the needs of your candidates. But it's the fun part, I think.
For me, recruiter branding is where the game changes. It becomes personal. And I'm going to use a real, example from just earlier, maybe 15 minutes ago. There are some of you that I know virtually, right? Through LinkedIn. I've followed you, and Jessica's one of them. You know, I went up to her and I'm like, hey, I know you, but I don't really know you, right? But instantly, boom, we're in a conversation, and off we go on, you know, a number of topics. So I think your personal recruiter brand, it's like I said, it changes the game.
COVID really changed the dynamic of those relationships, as we don't really meet a lot of the people that we work with or potentially could work with until later on in the relationship. So it's definitely something that we need to include earlier on to kind of, you know, emphasize. Why is it important for recruiters to develop their own personal brands within their organizations?
So I think as candidates are looking at the many different options they have, to the point, you know, it actually was interesting to see Evan put a number to how important it is to have a face to go with us as recruiters, and that is a key element to having people either respond to you or to trust you. I mean, I feel like all of the speakers prior to this kind of breadcrumbed to where we are now. Like, it is your own personal brand. Like, you think of the Chicago Bulls and you think of Michael Jordan, you know, he was his own personal brand within the larger brand. If that dates me a little bit, Michael Jordan was a basketball player. So yeah, it's critical for people to be able to relate to you, to your point, without ever having actually met you. Like, it's your one step in the door to making that connection.
And can we go back a slide? I'm realizing the slides are actually out of order. Yeah, and I think this is really important to talk to. There is such power when you combine employer branding with recruiter branding. There's a synergy, and I'm gonna call out my VP of People and Culture because she says this all the time. It's a force multiplier, right? So again, if you can get those two elements aligned and working together, it amplifies your message. I wish I had some data to throw up there, but I personally see that. I see the ROI of it, and that's why I'm very, very passionate about this. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, and so this one, you know, when Kim and I sat down and we were talking about what we wanted to say up here, you are the humans, not the robots behind the hiring. This is where I think MetroStar is really, really smart, because we have a human-centered design to our recruiting processes. People want to talk to people, not faceless companies. They want to talk to people that care, that value their time, and appreciate them. If it doesn't work out, hey, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to interview with our company. Sorry to go on that tangent. I apologize. You guys give me a mic.
So one thing, as you know, I have about 13 plus years in public relations, public affairs, and one thing when I speak to a lot of service members who are transitioning, they don't really understand the idea of building their own personal branding. So that's something that I advocate a lot of when it comes to talking to transitioning service members, because I had a supervisor years ago that told me that if you can align your personal and professional lenses, such like just like a camera, then the world comes into focus. And I think that applies even more here with our next question when we talk about the aligning your recruiting branding and the corporate branding together, and then when you include that employee, it makes it even better. So what are the key elements that recruiters should lean into while they create a compelling personal brand online, through podcasts, through your social media, your clearance job, profile? Like, what are those aspects?
I would say that it all starts with, who are you? If you can't answer that to your target audience, pause before you post anything or do anything. You need to be able to answer, like, what drives your passion for recruiting? How do you define a positive candidate experience? What value do you bring to your interactions? So if someone were to come to me and say, hey, Stephanie, like, who are you as a recruiter? What do you care about? I care about candidate experience. I care about not wasting people's time. I care about streamlined, effective hiring processes, which means that I got some fire sometimes when I go into my meetings with hiring managers to say, hey, respectfully, I don't think this makes sense. And I care about treating people with kindness, respect, and dignity in the process, right? Because we've all had a not so great interview process where you just kind of left feeling used.
Yeah. to kind of compound on that. So I think definitely some key elements as you're figuring out who it is you are, and then being authentic to that actual person. So my hope is that the person, whoever I'm talking to on the phone, whoever we're on the Zoom call with, the Teams call, whatever, if they walked down the street, they'd be like, oh, you are the same person that you were then as you are now, which I also think gives new people coming into the company, new hires, the feeling that they can also be themselves when they come into the company. If they are matching what they see online and social media and all other places that recruiters brand themselves, then they see those same things in the company being reflected. I think that's a way for them to feel comfortable that, hey, I can actually be myself, whatever that looks like. So I do, to the point of diversity and inclusion and having everybody at the table, having not everybody, I think sometimes we get also the comparison factor when you jump on clearance jobs or any of the platforms that we use, you look at everyone else going, gosh, I couldn't do what they do. Well, you don't have to. Like, not everybody's going to relate to that. Not everybody's going to connect to that. So being authentic to yourself and finding the people that relates to is also going to be important as you look to build out your own personal brand.
Can I get a show of hands? How many of you have been in technical recruiting in the cleared space for 10 years? Raise your hand, please. Okay, thank you. How many have been in this space for 15 years? 20 years? Please stand up for a second. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but please stand up. You know how many hundreds, thousands of people are out there that would love to talk to you and to know what you do and how you do it. I mean, there is such value in the knowledge and experience that you have, and if you can figure out how to appropriately put that content out there, I think it's a fantastic pipeline. Just to hit on a couple of things that we want to mention here. Audit the existing brand that exists at your company, right? Like, what are some things that are already out there that you could build on? So that's that combining, your personal brand with the employer brand, and engage with networks, right? Pay attention to the people in this room. There's 3 that I want to shout out here. If you can just stand up real quick. Jessica Reynolds, 17,000 followers on LinkedIn. I don't know if Ben's in here. Mena? Is he here? Okay, maybe in a different room, but 22,000 followers, I know. And then Maricel Maloney, 22,000 followers. Between 3 people that are at this event, we have access to 60,000 people through 3 people here. I mean, it's just the power of social media is insane.
Well, there is one way to get that information out there. And I would just like to say we have a new platform called Clearance Jobs Lives that you can use to put that information out there for your fellow recruiters. Hashtag yes, a sponsor. Okay, so getting back on the topic, how can recruiters really tailor their branding and strategies to attract external candidates effectively? Like you talked about being authentic, which is a strategy in and of itself. But what are other methods or strategies that you use to create that?
So I think it's very important, and I know that not all of us recruit for the same necessarily skill sets all the time, but you have to know your audience. You have to know who you're talking to. What are they looking for? What's happening in their world? Has there been a large amount of tech layoffs lately? Are they dealing with, whatever the case may be, you have to be in their world and know what they're looking for, or they're not going to come find you to get that information. You have to be sort of the trusted authority on some of the things that your audience is looking for. What somebody in the early stages of their career versus somebody who's more of a senior director level position, they're going to want different things. And being able to target your message in a broader perspective, but actually sitting down and figuring out who am I talking to, what do they want, what are they coming back for? Obviously there's certain ways to track those metrics through different platforms and engagement and things of that nature, but really figuring out who it is that you're talking to on the other side of the lens, the keyboard, the X, Y, and Z, to figure out if what you're giving them and what you're delivering is effective and meaningful to them.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, one of the smartest things I think that MetroStar does is we constantly ask, what does the customer care about? I mean, you hear this in meetings over and over and over again. And I think that helps when you're, tailoring brand strategies. Stay close to the customer, right? Ask the candidates that you've worked with, hey, what's the best part of this experience, and what was the not so great part? Are there areas of opportunity to build on? If you're, close to your customer, then you're going to know those things.
It sounds like you do a lot of advocacy on behalf of the recruit to your HR personnel as well. So I think that that's something that, candidates really need to understand as well, is that you as recruiters really do advocate for the things that they want or they care about, just like you said. And that makes, the stakeholder of the HR section that much more, like, they need to really dig their teeth into it. But let's talk about, as a recruiter and the brand, the company's brand, how do you ensure that the external employer brand is authentic, and it resonates with potential candidates? Do you have, say in that? Like, what is your part in that?
Yeah, I think, sometimes the company organization can be really helpful. So our marketing and communications team, talent acquisition team are under the same BU. So we sit very closely together and we work very closely together. Some of the things, I'm not going to read them all, that are up there on the screen. MetroStar's page, for example, showcases real employees on the website. So for me personally, when I was a candidate, I deep dived on all sorts of websites. It grabbed my attention for a number of reasons, but I saw people that looked like me, right? And there's we have a diverse population at MetroStar, but that's something I instantly connected with. The company, we also showcase employee testimonials. So why did you join? Showcasing those stories. And then our culture code is, it's called THINK, right? So trust, humility, imagination, no surprises, kindness. That is a culture that you can see, you can feel, and you can hear it every day in conversations. So for me, that's how I ensure that the external brand is authentic and it resonates with potential, candidates. And I weave that into my own recruiter brand as well.
So I think there's two different things that we do at BlueHalo that really make sure that we are keeping authentic to our messaging. One is we host flight nights throughout our different locations. So it's a chance for us to invite current employees, candidates, anybody really that wants to come. So if you're in the area, come hang out. But it's a chance for people to talk to somebody outside of the hiring process for candidates. It's a chance for maybe employees to deal with other employees that they don't run into or across on a daily basis. But it really gives them a chance to talk on a granular level, on a very real level of like the things that are happening in their world, their job, as far as the candidate perspective, like they can ask questions, speak in a real way over a beer or whatever about the things that are happening. So I think that helps getting feedback from candidates or things after the fact or during the fact even can help keep our external message the same. The other thing we have is a ambassador program within our TA team. So if we have a candidate that is like, hey, I like to rock climb and knit while I'm up there, I don't know. We have a list of people that have offered their time to speak to candidates who are not, again, involved in the hiring process. They have the chance to say, hey, ask me anything, ideally there's somebody with some common interest or some overlap in that way, but really making sure that we're sharing what's authentic about BlueHalo to the candidates, to anybody that asks, really, through those two mediums have been pretty effective too.
And what was the first night called?
Flight night.
Flight night, okay. I was like, fight night, that sounds a little...
That would be a whole different thing.
Sounds like a risky way.
Here's your boxing gloves.
Turn real fast.
Yeah, that's totally Thank you for clarifying that, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I'm hard of hearing. My wife will attest to that, so I needed to make sure that I was like, that might be a company I want to help out. How can recruiters align their branding strategy with their overall business objectives, really for your internal customers, your hiring teams, their TA team at large, leadership? Like, how can you focus it that way?
Yeah, so again, we put up some really good things on the slide. I'm not going to read everything, but what I want to talk about is some examples that go with those things. You have got to stay close to your hiring teams and in close communication. If you're not, you need to find a way to earn their trust and become a true partner. So the first thing up there, understand the business needs, right? We want to get ahead of the future positions that will be opening, so we're not in like a place of being reactive. So an example of that is we recently opened 106 CI Poly positions, right? So our recruitment strategies, processes, and part of my own recruiter branding was gearing content towards that, right? So we were proactively finding these individuals that had CI polys. The next one with like highlighting the value of your mission, ask your teams what's appropriate to share, right, about the mission that you can put out there. Ask your team about selling points. And then of course engaging in the right networks like this event, coming to this event, meeting other cleared individuals, using the clearance jobs and other platforms.
I think for us in TA, and don't anybody come at me on this one, but I think we're one of the few parts of the whole organization that has equal weight for internal and external customers. Our external candidates, obviously we're advocating for them, but our hiring managers and our TA team is just as big of a need and a focus for us as well. And I don't know that any other group within the organization has that duality like that. So to somebody's point, like staying close to your hiring managers as much as they will let you is vitally important. And then I think providing feedback to them as to what's happening on the outside really can help build up your credibility with your hiring managers, let them know that you're advocating for not only the candidate, but for them, and that it's a two-way street and you're, providing the medium. But I think your brand on the inside is just as important. I know for me, working a lot with our military and veteran hiring, it's something that we're working to build out. I want any hiring manager in the company to know that if they have a question, that they can reach out to me. And I've been very intentional about sharing that message through trainings, through lunch and learns, that kind of a thing, because I want that to be associated with my brand on the inside as much as it is on the outside, so they know I can come and ask these things. So I think it's important that we focus not only on what our outward-facing brand looks like, but also internal.
Okay. Well, you're taking a seat at a table of for marketing efforts, for recruitment marketing efforts. Who else is at that table? Is the marketing team? Is the communications team? Are they a part of the process when it comes to planning these strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. I touched on that with the organizational structure at the company that I support with marketing, communications, and then of course TA sitting under the same BU, so we can continually have those conversations.
Yeah, same thing. Marketing has to be a part of it, not only because they're part of the bigger picture, but I also think we need to advocate for our part of the marketing plan going forward to really focus in on what we need from the TA side.
I'm gonna throw a little bit of a curveball here. And I'm curious about if you're trying to reach a specific demographic, like let's say you want to increase the amount of, I'm just going to throw it out there, veterans that you're recruiting. Do you ever reach down to any recruiters, or any veterans that are on your team already and kind of bring in their insight, or, and that can apply to any demographic that you're looking to hire?
So for sure, I am in very close contact with our Halo Vets, which is our ERG for veterans in the company, and we're always in constant contact of, hey, what events are you doing? Because if I am targeting candidates, I want them to know that when they get to BlueHalo, that there is already a community that exists that they can be a part of. There's events happening, there's support, there's all those things that go along with any kind of ERG. So absolutely, it's not just Marcom, I guess, in that instance. It's certainly a broader category.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that, you mentioned something about like connection and a network. We're not that different from one another. We all want the same things, right? I don't know anyone that wants to be miserable or depressed when they go to work, and so that's really important that yes, we do continue to ask, like our veterans, for example, what appealed to you, right? What do you want to see? Again, staying close to your customer.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see. So we're going to move into a different sphere now, like digital and social media. We're going to talk about that. What do you think the power of social media is when it comes to your strategies?
Oof. Okay. The way that we consume information is rapidly changing. Does everyone in this room have a phone with access to the internet? It's just incredible. I said at the beginning of this, attention's the number one asset. We're fighting for attention. The way we consume information is very different from 10, 20 years ago. We're able to connect very, very rapidly. We're able to get onto companies' websites and get a feel, right, for that company, what that experience would be like working with it. So we have all this intel before we even talk to someone at that company, and I think that's the power. That's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it is the main way that most of us communicate with anybody for our positions, short of picking up the phone. I know that we talked about that earlier, but it is their first impression, so it has to be something, it's powerful. I mean, that's...
Who doesn't have a phone? Anybody? Anybody? Any outliers? Who's got a flip phone? I know one of you has.
They're coming back, though.
I mean, like, you know what I mean, like
Yeah,
a flip phone.
yeah.
You know, and I'm not talking about like your two double screens. You know, if you can.
The razor.
I saw a guy checking the stock market earlier. I'm like, your priorities are weird. Why do recruiters need to become like content creators? And you kind of already really answered this question, but like content creators when attracting candidates in today's market, and yeah, it's pretty easy answer, but like give us your perspective on the importance of creating that content and again and branding it at your level.
I mean, you're giving a firsthand experience, an account of what it's like to work there every day. I think that's hugely valuable. Recruiting is on the front lines, so to speak, and people want to know, right? Where should I work? What are there great companies out there? Yeah, there are. They still exist. So definitely, there's value there.
And I think to create sort of a library of content gives people a chance to go back and experience a different variety of things depending on what you're talking about, the subject matter, the way you're presenting it, the way you're sharing information. It gives people, and obviously a lot of the people that we work with are either in SCIFs, they're not on their phones during the day, that they can now access this information at any time. If you don't have the ability to maybe join the Clearance Jobs Live feed at the time, you know, there's certainly a chance to go back and review it later.
Absolutely. I think it's the transparency of it, of that company, organization, you know, the branding and really revealing what is behind the scenes of that company really draws in potential recruits and candidates as well.
Yeah, because what does everyone want to know? What's it going to be like when I get there? Who am I going to work with? Like,
is it toxic leadership? You know.
All those things.
So how do you maximize your engagement?
Okay, so the slide that you see up here, these are just a few tips out of thousands out there, right? If there were a 1 through 10 step-by-step guide that would, you know, tell you how to build this out and be perfect overnight, every single one of us would have 100,000 followers. These are just some things that I've found that have been very helpful. But before you even get to this, you have to have the courage to experiment, right? Have that curiosity. Formatting matters. LinkedIn formatting to post is very different from like traditional, you know, editing. Connecting and commenting, value the audience that you have. If it's an audience of 1, hey, give that person a lot of love. If it's 17,000, like some of the folks in this room, same thing, you know, appreciate them. They're giving you their time, so don't post and ghost. Optimize your profile. Honestly, today, if you look at your LinkedIn or Clearance Jobs profile, can someone tell what you recruit for just by looking at your profile? Your profile's out there. It's working for you 24/7. When you're sleeping, you're on vacation, your profile's still up. Timely posting, you know, that's just something you kind of got to figure out the timing of that. With like visibility, and then storytelling. Again, share those personal stories and your experiences.
Nope, we covered that one.
Does anybody use TikTok to recruit? There's one. As a social media manager, as somebody who studied it, who has to use it for job, I know like storytelling, the timeliness, being consistent. Consistency is a key when it comes to social media. So I know that there's a lot of time to invest in it, but it can pay back tenfold when you do that.
If I can add super quick, when you said that, it sparked something. Instagram, most of us have Instagram, right? Simone Bees, Simone is S-Y-M-O-N-E, and then Bees, B-E-E-Z. This is a gal in cyber, started about 15 years ago, 300,000 followers on Instagram, and she talks about how she got into GovCon, the benefits of, you know, working overseas and taxation stuff, all the stuff related to clearance jobs. So the audience is out there. It's just a matter of us trying to connect with them through these different platforms.
Anything you want to add, Kim?
No, good on that one.
Cool. Let's talk about balancing those, you know, those profiles and those brandings. How do you balance promoting your personal recruiter brand with maintaining consistency in your company's employer branding?
You want to take this? Okay, go
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it starts with reviewing your company's social media policy. These guys know. I didn't jump into MetroStar and boom, I was out there posting. No. Review the social media policy, right? Talk to your managers, your HR team, whoever you need to, your marketing, to make sure that your messaging, again, aligns with the companies. That's hugely important. It is to me, because I like my company. I don't want to have to find another job because I did something crazy, online. Again, maintaining consistency in your messaging, adding a human element. So if you were to go like on my LinkedIn page, you'll instantly know I'm a cleared recruiter for MetroStar, and I'm an Army veteran. I'm an Air Force wife. I have 2 small kids. Like, there's these little pieces of me that I share. It's probably like 10% of who I am, but add that human element. Again, people want to work with people, not faceless companies. This is kind of a repeat. Monitor, engage with your followers, right? Show them your appreciation for that like, that reshare. It matters. Those are the main ones on that one, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, like we kind of talked on a little bit before, maintaining contact or communications, or having a line between you and your Marcom team and knowing what they're doing, but also making sure that you're being authentic to yourself and bringing that personal element to it, is I think all of us know that there's a line, and we want to make sure that we're giving positive information and sharing things with candidates that we would want to know as a candidate. So being able to bring that from yourself authentically within your own brand, kind of keeping that balance that way.
Interesting. It sounds like 2 lenses coming into alignment and really being transparent and showing the image clearly. That's good. I like that. When it comes to the social media aspect of it, one thing that's really important to anybody that has a presence are the metrics. What metrics should recruiters track to measure their effectiveness in their recruiting campaigns or their marketing strategies?
Yeah, I would say this is, again, where you have to have the courage to fail, because you're not going to know instantly what's going to work right off the bat. But once you sort of get tuned into that, you can start tracking total applications received, right? The messages that are jumping into your direct messages, your conversion rates. You can add unique tracking links to your posts to track that ROI. And then, of course, ask yourself about the quality of applicants. Are these qualified individuals that have clearances? If they're not, you probably want to tweak your messaging.
Yeah, for sure, tracking the platforms of where they're coming from and the messages that you've shared there can certainly lead to kind of giving you a better idea of what's being effective to your candidates and what's not, and definitely the quality of candidate. If you're getting 7,000 applicants, but none of them are actual fits for the position, maybe you're not in the right spot of sharing your message.
If you really want to get in the weeds, you can also get with your webmaster, so you can track the metrics on your websites. So if you're posting links to specific recruiting, postings, or even your recruitment annexes on your sites, you can actually have your webmaster send you the metrics to that traffic and what's being brought in and what postings are working more than others. So it really helps with the metrics on that end. When it comes to, again, we kind of touched on it earlier, reaching down to the employees and the people you've already recruited, do you ever get their feedback? Do you ever solicit this feedback and use that to improve the employer branding?
For sure. So I do try and reach out to them within the first week of hire, not only to make sure that they're good and where they need to be, whatever, but I do ask questions like, hey, how was the process, anything? At that point, most people are just excited to start their new job, and there's not always the most helpful, not helpful, that's not necessarily the most reflective feedback is maybe a better way to say it. So I do try and reach out a month later, hey, in retrospect, thinking back on it, is there anything that you wish would have happened different? Are there things that you know now that I didn't explain to you at the time? Like, definitely keeping that feedback loop open, and letting them know that you can reach out anytime if there's an issue, or if you think of something, or if you have a friend and you want to refer them, we can do that too. Making sure that that's a continual feedback loop.
Same. Yeah, there's nothing. It's okay.
When it comes to, again, your personal branding, what challenges have you faced in building that personal recruiting brand? and how did you overcome those obstacles?
Fear is the number one thing that prevents people from jumping on, right, to these social media platforms. No one likes getting negative feedback. Does anyone know, or have you heard of VaynerMedia, Gary Vaynerchuk? Pretty large marketer. Yeah, I mean, he talks about this a lot, and it really resonated with me when I started to put myself out there, right? And figuring out, like, what is it about this that is holding me back? It's fear. It all goes back to that fear. And then lack of control. Once, you maybe post something, you don't know if you're gonna get negative comments, if somebody's gonna throw a virtual tomato. That's gonna happen. It doesn't feel good, but you very quickly realize, like, okay, delete it. You delete it, block, move on. It's not that big of a deal. Resource constraints, time. How much time can you put into it? I do this because there is an ROI. Let's just be real clear about that. If you go onto my page, I'm not selling additional services. I haven't, branded a T-shirt and I'm selling that on the side of the road. That's not my jam. But what is my jam is, like, I value my time. I don't want to waste my time. So I want to make sure that I'm strategic with what I do, on these platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I think fear, that's going to be, not only of not getting any sort of response, like, what if you do all this work and put time into it and put yourself out there and it's just crickets. I mean, there's certainly that aspect of it too, or it's not resonating, and there's a lot of work that goes into creating this. So to put yourself out there and not get a positive response is, daunting.
Well, you kind of already touched on it, like how you handle negative feedback. But Kim, how do you handle the negative feedback when you do get it?
So I think you have one of two choices. You can either ignore it and delete it, or you can acknowledge it and hit it straight on and say, hey, I respect your opinion. This is why I thought what I did. We can agree to disagree. I think for the most part, there's always going to be somebody that has something to say. So deleting it, ignoring it is probably a better option. But there certainly are times where maybe it engages a larger discussion, a little bit of back and forth. Why do you feel like that? So I don't think all negative feedback is negative. I mean, you could certainly turn that into a positive, or use that to, maybe I didn't answer this correctly, or clarify your point a little bit more.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I can give to somebody that is kind of having that low return on investment or no return on investment is to just contain or consistently be, like, authentic, but also don't really, like, jump and dive too much into the negative, because people will eventually, if it does catch on, people will go back and see that negative content if you do decide to post it. So frustration aside, just stay consistent, stay positive, and again, just keep really working at those foundational strategies that will bring it up to a good return on investments. But just don't ever let it go to that negative space, because people will go back and find that. We've seen that a lot in social media.
Yeah, you have to stay at it. It's like going to the gym. The first time I went on LinkedIn, I sucked at it. And you guys can go back in my profile. You can go see it from 3 years ago. It wasn't very good, and it took time to get to 40,000 followers and constantly experimenting, right? And figuring out, okay, that didn't work. They hated that one, and doing something different. We put up this quote too, which is really important. Brene Brown, she's super well-known social worker. She's done a lot of research on courage, shame, vulnerability. And this is one of her quotes that she's really well known for. If you're not in the arena also getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback. Absolutely not. Don't jump on my page and tell me it sucks if you haven't tried it yourself. Like, come on in the arena and join me, because it is tough. But if you can figure it out, it's another pipeline to connect with candidates. Quick example of that is last Wednesday. Again, this is real time, and some context here. I was recruiting for a very, very hard to fill full stack.net developer, TSSCI level. I put up something not super related to the cleared space, more on the personal side. And this individual who has, like, what I call a ghost profile, right? I wouldn't have been able to find him with a Boolean string. He reached out, said he was looking, contract unexpectedly ended. Friday, he has the interview. We sent him the offer today, actually from this table up here, sent that out. So that's the power there.
So next thing is we'd like to kind of focus on the future. Like, what trends are emerging in recruitment, marketing, employer branding, or cleared talent that businesses should be aware of?
So I think, and they referred to it earlier in one of the talks, I mean, obviously the younger generations that are coming up, we're gonna have to start focusing on the things that are important to them. So value, culture, mission, TikTok, you know, being aligned with something that matters. The things that are important to like the next generations are gonna have to be incorporated into our recruiting processes and focused on, because they're the people that we're gonna be recruiting for. I mean, it has to align that way.
I think we're going to continue to see a rise of employer branding. Is anyone in here under the age of 25? 25-year-olds are kicking our ass out there. They've got fantastic, you know, Instagrams, TikTok. They've figured it out. Well, they've grown up in technology, but I think we're again going to see that rise of employer branding. I think we're going to see a more like personalized recruitment experience, leveraging more data, right? That gives us, you know, data that we can figure out additional touch points to make it a more personalized experience.
I think we're going to focus a little bit more on well-being and mental health, and having that be a focus on not only the whole recruiting aspect of it, but being an employee, that's going to have to focus on that too.
I've been to a couple of events recently, and I think the branding that I'm seeing is definitely following that, as well as a lot of benefits that really are what, you know, the older generation would consider like alternative benefits. You know, there was one company that I went and sat down in an informative briefing, and they even offered it was like almost parental leave for when you get a new pet, when you adopt a pet. So they'll give you an added bonus to help adopt that pet, and then they'll give you like 5 to 7 days to go home and bond with it so you can work remotely. So we're gonna see a lot of trends changing and coming into the market.
That was not on my bingo card. I was not expecting that.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's something that the younger generation is gonna bring some additional kind of views from, you know, from their perspectives as you know, and it's gonna adjust the way that we strategize, or you strategize. So I think we've kind of already touched on it, but I'm just going to say, you know, ask it one more time. Like, how do you see employer branding changing, you know, as we go into the next 5-10 years?
I think there's going to be more integration in technology. Earlier, for those of you that were in the room when Tommy spoke, he said AI is not going to take your jobs. It's the people that know AI, they're going to take your jobs. So I think the technology piece, who knows what that's going to look like in 5 years.
I mean, to the point of the next generation, they are digitally and native technology users. That's all they've ever done. So that's definitely going to have to be implemented more, having more tech-focused options.
All right, well, I think that's
was amazing.